Hi everyone, my name is Dejan. I'm Public Cloud Consulting Engineer with Palo Alto Networks, and in next 15 to 20 minutes I will be showing you how to protect your applications and data by deploying VMSeries on AWS. Just before we start, let's have a brief overview of today's agenda. So first we will go through architectural diagram, then we will go into best practices and see how to protect your applications and data on AWS, and after that we will move into most interesting part of today's session, which is guided demonstration. Guided demonstration will be split into two parts. So in the first part, we will deploy a two-tier environment that is going to be protected by the VMSeries. And then in the second, we will test security by running some real-life attacks. Last but not least, we will share some additional resources. So let's jump into architectural diagram. What you can see here is our goal for today, which is to deploy two-tier application environment that consists of web server that will run Apache and host WordPress, and database server that is going to run MySQL. We will also deploy our next generation firewall, which is going to protect overall environment. To achieve this, we will use one of our publicly available CloudFormation templates, which you can find on our GitHub repository. And what we will be basically doing in this process of the deployment, we will deploy this architecture in a fully automated way by combining bootstrapping, which is a feature of a VMSeries firewall that allows you to load a predefined configuration into the firewall during initial boot up. So it means that once you deploy your firewall, it is going to have all the security policies, all objects, pretty much end-to-end configuration, so you will not have to do anything manually. And we will automate overall process by deploying CloudFormation template. But before that, let's have a look into some fundamentals of securing AWS environment. And the first thing which we need to do is to get our subnets right. So in AWS, as we know, we have two types of subnets. We have internal subnets, which don't have connectivity to the internet. And also we have external subnets, which with the help of internet gateway, as well as correctly configured routing tables, are providing internet connectivity to our environment. In order to secure our environment, we need to make sure that internal and external subnets are correctly configured. So what you can see here is on the left side, we have external subnet. So we connect our firewall to this subnet and we call it untrust. On the right side, we have internal subnet where we also connect another interface of our firewall and we call this side trust. So what you can see additionally is that on the internal subnets, we place the workloads, which are web servers, database servers, middlewares, all kind of different stuff which we want to protect. And we put in the middle VMSeries next generation firewall so that it stands between external world or internet and our protected environment. When we do this, we basically provide multi-level protection that is going to inspect all type of traffic, such as inbound, outbound, and also east-west traffic between virtual machines or services within our environment. The way to achieve this is to create IGV, connect it to the VPC, and configure routing tables so that external subnet has IGV as a default gateway, and all internal subnets have trust interface of our NGFW. Once we have sorted out our subnets, we can proceed and deploy VMSeries. The VMSeries can be licensed using consumption-based model or as a traditional bring your own license model. Consumption-based licensing is provided in the form of two fixed bundles, which can be purchased for hourly or yearly time periods. When it comes to the bring your own license, any one of the VMSeries firewall models, along with associated subscriptions and support, are purchased through normal Palo Alto Networks channels and then deployed through our AWS Management Console by using an authorization code. In the process of deployment, you will have to select correct instance size. You will get a recommendation for this. You will have option to configure up to 8 elastic network interfaces for the firewall, and also various type of options when it comes to the performance that include CPU, memory, and storage. Now that we deployed our firewall, we need to ensure that all traffic flows through it. As we know, in AWS, every subnet that is created in VPC is automatically and permanently attached to the VPC virtual router. If there is only one internal subnet in the VPC, then we simply create a default route that we point to elastic network interface of the internal firewall. And that makes sure that all traffic goes through the firewall. But what happens when there are 2 or more internal subnets, which of course is the case in most of the deployments? Well, with 2 or more subnets, firewall can intentionally or accidentally be bypassed. And as that is something that we would like to avoid, what we need to do is we need to ensure that inter-subnet traffic always traverses the firewall. And we achieve this by creating a route in AWS for protected instances that points to the firewall as a default gateway. But the story does not end here, because there is a possibility that somebody reconfigures internal routing table and set virtual router instead of firewall as a default route, which could lead into firewall bypass. Because we want to avoid this and to add another layer of protection against this scenario, what we need to do is we need to add security group that is self-referencing. When we create self-referencing security group, it will allow all local traffic, but any packets that are sent to the virtual router that are destined to another subnet will be dropped. And when we do this, we will effectively create isolated subnet that only speaks through the firewall with the rest of the network. This is example of self-referencing security groups, and with this we have finished part that is related to the slides, and now we can move to the most interesting part, which is guided demonstration. We will start this guided demonstration by going back to architectural diagram. The reason for that is we have here our URL, which is going to take us to GitHub repository with 2-tier sample that holds all the required documents as well as configuration files and CloudFormation templates, which we will need to deploy this architecture. I'm going to open it, and as you can see here, what we have is how-to guide. This is a very nicely organized step-by-step guide that will take you through the process of deployment. Then what we have Bootstrap bucket, and we have CloudFormation template, as well as various other scripts. First, what we will do is we will look into demonstration guide. When you open demonstration guide, and when you go to the table of contents, you will find that it is very detailed. And as you can see here, it goes through the basic things like creating AWS account, reviewing and accepting end user license agreement for VMSeries, creating SSH key pairs, and all kind of other stuff. What is important for us to highlight is that deployment process, which we will be doing now, is going to take 2 steps. First step will be to create a Bootstrap bucket and to also upload all the files that we need so that we get it ready for deployment. Just to have a brief overview, I will go now to page number 12, and here you can see how to prepare bootstrapping process. Instead of going through the deployment guide, we will go directly to AWS console and we will prepare everything for bootstrapping. Now that we are here, let's first have a look of our resources. If we go to the VPC, you will see that everything is empty. And if we go back and select EC2, you will of course see that pretty much everything else here is also empty. So we have overview of our environment prior to deployment. And of course, we will review everything once we deploy it. So first thing which we will do, we will configure bootstrapping. Bootstrapping is a very straightforward process, and we do it by going to S3 service. There we will select create bucket and create a new bucket. Once this is ready, we will of course open it and create 4 folders. First folder we will call config. Second folder we will call content. Third will be license. And fourth will be software. Now that we have this structure in place, we will upload configuration files from repository which we downloaded from GitHub. We will do this first by selecting config, selecting upload, and when we say add files, you will see here we have 2-tier sample folder which we downloaded from GitHub, and there we select bootstrap folder, and there we find bootstrap XML, which is configuration file of Firewall, and init-cfg, which holds additional configuration values. We will say open and upload it. Now that we did this, we will go to content, and there we will upload content package which is related to threat. While this is being uploaded, let's review other 2 folders. If we go here and look into the license folder is very useful, especially if you plan to use bring your own licensing model. The reason for this is that you can add their file with your auth codes, and in the process of the boot up or during the process of the boot up, system is going to automatically contact the licensing server and license your firewall. Additionally, software is very useful if you want to upgrade the version of your PenOS during the boot up process. Now that we finished with the upload of the content, we actually finished all the preparation of bootstrapping, and we are ready to proceed to the deployment of CloudFormation Template. And we will start by going back to AWS console. There we will select CloudFormation, create new stack, and choose file. This will take us back to our 2-tier sample folder, and there you will find pan-sample-cft.json. This is a CloudFormation template that we will select, and it is going to deploy overall infrastructure including firewall, web server, database server, and all the other networking resources that we need. We will say here next, and then we will give a name to our stack. And this is a very important step in here. We have a field which is called bootstrap bucket name. This is the place where we link our bootstrapping bucket with this deployment. So please make sure that you type it correctly. Now that we have this finished, all we need to do is we need to select our key pair, and then we can proceed. If you like, you can add your tags. I'm just gonna skip it in here. And finally, we are ready to start deployment. So I'm just gonna say here create, and as we can see, our deployment is initiated. For the sake of time, I will make a small pause at the moment, and I will be back as soon as everything is deployed. Welcome back to our guided demonstration. As you can see here, our deployment of CloudFormation Template finished successfully, and what we will do now, we will go back to AWS console and review newly created resources. We will start with VPC, and there we will see that we have a new VPC created. We have 3 subnets. If we look into route tables and we select the first one, we will see that it is associated to IGV, which means this is a routing table used for external subnets. And if we select the second one, we will see that there's no IGV, which means that this route table is used only for internal subnets. And then if we look into elastic IPs, we can see that there we have two associated. Now we will go back and select EC2, and there we will look into instances. And when we look into the instances, we can see that we have up and running Firewall, web server, and also database server. With this, we have concluded successfully deployment, and now it is a time to go back to our CloudFormation. And when we select our stack, we will go to Outputs, and here we will find URL to our WordPress as well as URL to our firewall management. When we select this URL, it is going to take us to login screen of our next generation firewall. Details about credentials can be found in deployment guide. And now that we logged in successfully, let's go and have a look of monitoring tab. What we can see here is that all the traffic that is traversing our AWS environment is inspected by our next generation firewall. As a first example, let's have a look of this package. This package is coming from external zone, which means internet, and as a destination it is going to the web zone. It is coming from this IP address. This is the IP address of web server. It is using port 80, application type web browsing, and it is allowed because we have security rule which we call web browsing, where we allow it. As a next example, we can also see here east-west traffic in our AWS environment, and if we take this package, we can see that web server is communicating with the DB server, and here we can see IP addresses. The application type is MySQL, and it is allowed because we have a specific rule where we allow web to DB communication for MySQL application. And now, as a final step, we will simulate a real attack from web server towards database. To do so, we will go to AWS and we will select this URL of WordPress. After we have this opened, we will take off this part of URL and we will type SQL attack.html. This is a part of overall demonstration, and all the details again you can find in demonstration guide. And what we will do now is the following. Let's assume that somebody somehow managed to compromise web server and is trying to access database server from it. So first thing what we will do, we will launch web2db SSH attempt. And this is done. Now when we go back, we will try another attack and we will try to do brute force SQL root password guessing. And this is done as well. So let's go to our firewall and see if it managed to find it out and block it. So here, when we come to our monitor tab, the best way to view this part is to go to threat. And if we go to the threat, and we can see here that there was a MySQL login authentication failed from web zone to DB zone, and we blocked it because it was malicious. And this brings us to the end of today's demonstration. Once you are finished with deployment of your environment and have firewalls up and running, our strong suggestion is to register your VMSeries on our support portal. This will give you access to software as well as content updates, but also you will have a wealth of information that can be helpful during and after deployment. For new customers, registering takes a few minutes and it consists of 3 easy steps. Step number 1 is to set up your support account, and you can do so by opening this URL and following registration process. Once you finish with the registration process, you will be able to register your VMSeries devices, and in order to do so, you will need to have a VMSeries serial number and CPU ID, which you can find on the management console of your firewall. With all of this in place, you will go to Customer Support Portal, select Devices, register new device, follow the process, and you will finish the registration. Existing customers can add VMSeries to their existing support account by following steps number 2 and number 3. As a next step, we would strongly recommend that you visit our cloud integration portal. There you can find a lot of valuable resources as well as CloudFormation templates and AWS scripts. And with this, we would like to thank you very much for being with us and for watching this video.